This story is about two very strong and dangerous species called Deathworlders. Both humans and Xyrr'thals come from harsh, deadly planets where only the toughest survive. When these two meet for the first time officially, everyone expects a fight to prove who is stronger. The meeting takes place in a big space council hall filled with tension and fear. But what happens is very different and surprising. Instead of violence, something new and unexpected begins. One species shows respect in a way that changes everything. The story feels intense and emotional because it explores trust, friendship, and peace between two fierce groups. The stakes are high because if these two powerful species can find peace, it could change the future of the galaxy forever. The Galactic Council Hall was a place of power and history. It had seen wars stopped, alliances born, and peace signed. But today, the air was heavy with a tension unlike any before. Every creature in the vast chamber felt it, a quiet dread as two of the galaxy's fiercest Deathworld species prepared to meet for the first time. The term Deathworld was feared and respected. It meant a planet so harsh that only the strongest survived. The creatures born there were tough, deadly, and always ready for battle. They lived by one rule: when two Deathworld species meet, one must bow. It was an unspoken law that kept peace and avoided destruction. But everyone in the hall wondered, who would bow today? The humans or the Xyrr'thals? At the eastern viewing platform, the Xyrr'thal delegates stood in tense silence. Their translucent bodies, usually bright with shifting colors that showed their feelings, were dull and gray. This was the color of fear and confusion. They whispered no words but showed every emotion in the dark swirling fluids inside them. Ambassador Xyrr'thal, their leader, stood still as a statue, eyes locked on the two entrances, the front ceremonial doors and the rear service gate. Near the exits, the Xyrr'thal, a predator species known for their sharp claws and quick strikes, waited silently. Their powerful bodies tensed, ready to fight or flee at a moment's notice. The Aven, small bird-like creatures, clung together, their feathers flattened with nervousness. Even the careful Sinian delegates, masters of diplomacy, betrayed their anxiety. Their tails twitched slightly, a sign of stress, and their old eyes darted constantly, watching. Then, 5 minutes early, the rear gate hissed open. Silence cracked like glass. 3 humans stepped through. They were different from what everyone expected. No fancy suits or diplomatic robes. Instead, they wore rough green uniforms that looked ready for war. The lead human was a man with close-cropped brown hair and sharp eyes. His name was Captain Dylan Sebastian. Beside him walked Lieutenant Ivy, a weapons officer, her auburn hair tied back tightly. Behind them was Nick Vulov, a large man whose broad smile revealed teeth sharp enough to scare even the Xyrr'thals. His job was simple, he said, to fix things. The unusual makeup of this team, military and technical, set off alarms in every mind. No diplomats, only soldiers and a handyman. All eyes followed as the humans walked confidently to the center of the hall. Captain Sebastian began the traditional greeting, approaching each delegation with calm words. "Greetings, honored representatives," he said clearly. His voice carried the weight of command and calm. "I am Captain Dylan Sebastian. This is Lieutenant Ivy, our arms officer, and Nick Vulov, our technical specialist." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Military titles meant danger. The other species shifted uneasily. The humans' readiness made it clear, they expected trouble. Moments later, the front doors opened. The Xyrr'thals entered. They were larger, powerful creatures covered in orange fur that shone like flames. Their sharp claws clicked on the floor as they moved. 3 pack leaders stood tall, their faces wild and proud, fangs just visible behind their lips. Their eyes scanned the room with hunting precision. No attempt was made to hide their deadly claws, retractable but extended, and their presence filled the hall with a dangerous energy. The council's liaison, Grimmack, a Xyrr'thal delegate, trembled in the middle, trying to hold his form steady. His body shimmered with swirling silver, a sign of panic. He knew the history of these species. Humans were known for stubborn survival and fierce fighting. The Xyrr'thals, older and more ruthless, lived by pack rules where strength meant survival. "Honored representatives of Earth," Grimmack began, voice shaking, "I present to you the Xyrr'thal delegation, pack leaders Vizara, Ianak, and Emira." Vizara, the tallest Xyrr'thal, stepped forward with calm grace. Her eyes locked on Captain Sebastian, sharp and unyielding. The others followed, their powerful bodies forming a V-shape behind her, tails swaying slowly. Grimmack turned to the Xyrr'thals, "And to you, Xyrr'thals, I present the representatives of Earth, Captain Dylan Sebastian, Lieutenant Ivy, and Nick Vulov." The room held its breath. The two groups faced each other, two apex predators ready to decide dominance. Then, something nobody expected happened. Xyrr'thal bowed. Her body lowered in a smooth, graceful gesture of submission. Her pack members followed. The room was stunned. No fight, no challenge, only bowing. The unspoken rule was broken. The shock rippled through the hall. Data pads slipped from trembling hands. A Xyrr'thal delegate gasped loudly. The Xari lost control of their emotions, flashing wild colors of disbelief. The prey species whispered in fear, unable to understand. The question burned in every mind, why? Captain Sebastian didn't roar or show triumph. Instead, he gently placed his hand on Xyrr'thal's head. His fingers brushed through her fur with care. Xyrr'thal's eyes closed. A low rumble of contentment escaped her, a sound the translators struggled to define but understood as peace. Chaos erupted. Voices rose in dozens of languages, overlapping in confusion. The council's order broke down. Grimmack fought to regain control, his form shifting to blue-green of forced calm. He called for silence. Pack leader Xyrr'thal, please explain, Grimmack said, voice steady. Xyrr'thal raised her head, eyes bright. We Larians bow to no one, she said firmly. I did not submit. I made it easier for him to pet my head. The hall exploded in disbelief. Captain Sebastian cleared his throat. I will explain, he said softly. This is not the first time humans and Larians have met. We met before, in a place far from here, under hard and strange conditions. Xyrr'thal's voice rumbled agreement, and Dylan nodded. The council leaned in, eager and shocked. Dylan settled on the floor, making himself comfortable. Xyrr'thal lowered herself beside him, the two appearing as friends rather than enemies. This story, Dylan said, begins 3 years ago, on a frozen hell world called 130 Malawian Quachas. The room hushed. 2 armed ships, human and Laharian, had crashed on the same hostile planet. Both crews were wounded and trapped. The rules of Deathworld said they should have fought to the death. Instead, they found another way. They talked. They survived. They worked together. They became something new. The story of how 2 Deathworld species became allies would challenge everything the galaxy believed about survival, strength, and respect. The cold on 130 Malawian Quachas was more than just weather. It was a living enemy, biting through every layer of clothing, freezing the breath of every living thing. The planet was covered in endless ice and snow, a world so harsh most species avoided it completely. Yet there, in the middle of this frozen wasteland, 2 damaged ships lay silent, scarred from a violent crash. Captain Dylan Sebastian remembered the moment they touched down. Their ship, the Pioneer's Hope, had broken apart, systems failing one by one. Around them, ice storms raged, fierce and endless. The Laharian scout ship, not far away, was in similar ruin. Both crews were weak, cold, and trapped. The first days were filled with fear. Both sides expected betrayal. Each watched the other with suspicion, claws and weapons ready. They were predators, born to fight for survival. The rules of their world said enemies could not trust one another. But slowly, something changed. Dylan recalled sitting in the cold, alone except for the faint sounds of movement from the Laharian camp nearby. Their heated shelters were small, but they were all they had. Food was scarce. Heat was scarcer. I never thought we'd live past the first week, Dylan said quietly to the council, but something kept us going. We all knew dying alone was worse than trying to survive together. Xyrr'thal nodded beside him. Our packs taught us to fight and kill, but also to protect. We saw in the humans a will to live that matched our own. Slowly, fear gave way to understanding. Their crews began sharing warmth. At first, it was only body heat during the long, frozen nights. Then food and tools. Humans showed the Laharians how to build stronger shelters, use their limited power better. The Laharians taught the humans how to track the small creatures that lived beneath the ice, tiny, fast animals called ice borrowers. It was hard work. Every day was a test of patience and trust. Lieutenant Ivy, sitting near Dylan, smiled as she remembered the struggles. At first, every tool we passed to them felt like a weapon handed to a stranger. Every movement was watched closely. But we learned to read each other's signs, when a glance meant danger, when a silence meant peace. Nick Vulov chuckled, his large hands folded calmly. There were accidents, of course. Claws scraped skin, nerves flared. But every time, we pulled back, apologized. We had to survive together, or not at all. The council listened in stunned silence. The idea of fierce Deathworld predators working side by side, sharing stories and shelter, was almost impossible to imagine. Then Dylan spoke of the storm. On day 18, the worst ice storm hit. Winds howled like wild beasts. Temperatures dropped below -100 degrees. Our heating systems failed. We faced death not from weapons, but from the cold. Xyrr'thal's deep voice joined in. We had no choice but to come together fully. Humans generate good body heat, and Laharians have thick fur. It made sense to share warmth, share space. Nick grinned. That night, I was the first to say it out loud: we freeze apart, or we live together. The room was silent, save for the hum of council technology. The idea of such intimacy between predator species shocked many. Prey species in the chamber huddled closer, some closing their eyes in disbelief. The humans and Laharians shared sleeping spaces, Ivy added with a smile. It was strange and tense, but it saved lives. Dylan looked at Xyrr'thal, his eyes softening. I woke to find one of them curled beside me. That moment broke the last walls between us. Xyrr'thal smiled, a rare softness in her fierce eyes. After that, we were no longer enemies. We were pack. The council's translators struggled to keep up with the emotional weight behind those words. The idea of a pack meant loyalty, protection, and family. Not just for a moment, but for life. From that night on, Dylan said, we shared meals, stories, and work. Humans taught Laharians games to pass the long hours. Laharians taught humans how to hunt ice borrowers. Ironek, the scarred Laharian pack leader, added with a low growl, we became more than survival partners. We became friends. We learned to read each other's signs, when to fight, when to trust. Grimmack, the Xari liaison, shifted in his form, his fluids swirling in slow, thoughtful patterns. Your story defies all known models of Deathworld behavior, he said. Such cooperation is unprecedented. Dylan nodded. It was hard. There were close calls. Claws grazing skin, fears rising. But we chose to survive together, not apart. After 6 weeks, Xyrr'thal continued, we had rebuilt one ship from 2 broken vessels. We were ready to leave the ice world. The room was quiet, everyone absorbed in the story of impossible survival and unexpected friendship. But the hardest part, Dylan said softly, was saying goodbye. They had become more than strangers. They were packed now, bound by shared hardship and trust. Returning to their own people meant hiding the truth. Reports were edited, memories buried. No one back home would understand or accept such closeness with a supposed enemy. Xyrr'thal lowered her head, voice heavy. We parted ways but kept secret communication. When we heard about today's council meeting, we reached out again. Dylan smiled faintly. We didn't want to pretend to be enemies anymore. Not after what we shared. Not after becoming family. The word family sent ripples through the chamber. Some species trembled in shock. Others whispered fears of new power dynamics. Grimmack, struggling to maintain order, raised his voice. This cooperation you describe, this friendship, is it natural for Deathworld species? Xyrr'thal's eyes locked on every member of the council. No. But it is real. Dylan reached out to touch Xyrr'thal's shoulder gently. We trust each other. We know each other's weaknesses and strengths. The council chamber was silent, the weight of the moment sinking in. The rules of the galaxy had been rewritten by the frozen nights of 130 Malawian Quachas. Grimmack's voice broke the stillness. When 2 Deathworld species meet, one must bow. But you have shown us a new way. The chamber was filled with a mixture of awe, confusion, and hope. The galaxy had witnessed something rare, the birth of an alliance between the fiercest of predators. Dylan glanced around the room, eyes steady. This is just the beginning. The council chamber remained heavy with silence after Dylan's words. The idea that 2 Deathworld species, both born in worlds of pain and violence, had chosen trust over war was almost too much for many to believe. Yet the proof stood right before them, humans and Larians sitting together, united. Captain Dylan Sebastian looked around at the anxious faces of the council delegates. He knew their fear. This story challenged everything they had been taught about survival, strength, and power. But he also knew the truth inside himself, the truth he and the Larians had learned on that frozen planet. It wasn't easy, Dylan began again, to change from hunters to allies. Old instincts don't disappear overnight. We had to fight not only the elements but our own fears. Xyrr'thal, the Laharian pack leader, nodded. My pack was trained to see weakness as a threat. To show kindness was dangerous. But the humans' courage and honesty made us question what we knew. Lieutenant Ivy added, We shared danger and hardship. It built respect. Slowly, we understood that strength was not just about claws or weapons, but about trust. The council listened, some skeptical, others hopeful. The prey species held their breaths, trying to imagine peace between fierce predators. Even the predator species seemed unsure what to make of this new truth. Then Dylan told the story of the plant. It seemed like a small thing, a single green sprout growing in the endless ice. But to the crew on 130 Malawian Kwachas, it was a miracle. Nick Vulov, the handyman, smiled as he remembered. We found it near the wreckage, struggling to survive in the frozen ground. At first, we thought it was useless, just a tiny plant in a dead world. But the plant grew stronger. It provided small bits of food, and more importantly, hope. Ivy named it the Hope Plant, Nick said. It became a symbol. If this fragile plant could survive there, maybe we could too. Xyrr'thal reached out, touching Nick's arm. That plant gave us something to fight for beyond survival. It gave us meaning. The council murmured among themselves. The idea that a single plant could unite such deadly species seemed almost poetic. But Dylan's voice grew serious. Hope was fragile. Our situation was still desperate. Supplies ran low. We fought storms that tried to tear us apart. Every day was a choice, give up or keep fighting. Xyrr'thal's eyes shone. We had to trust each other fully. Not just in battle, but in the quiet moments, the shared stories, the games, the warmth. Dylan smiled gently. We learned to read each other's fears and strengths. I learned that Xyrr'thal liked to be scratched behind her ears. She learned that humans need words of comfort when scared. The room was silent, the story unfolding like a fragile thread weaving two different lives together. Ivy leaned forward. We taught each other survival skills. They taught us hunting. We taught them engineering. Together, we rebuilt our ships. Nick laughed softly. We fixed the broken parts with whatever we could find. It was messy, but it worked. Xyrr'thal's deep voice rumbled softly. When we finally launched from that frozen hell, we left as one pack. Not enemies, not rivals. Dylan's eyes met hers. We returned to our worlds changed. And we kept the bond alive. Grimmack, the Xari liaison, finally spoke, his voice steady but full of wonder. Your story shows a new path for Deathworld species. One that doesn't rely on dominance or violence. But the council was not without its doubts. A Xyrr'thal delegate's voice rang out, sharp and fearful. What happens if this trust breaks? What if one side betrays the other? Dylan's answer was calm and honest. Trust is a risk. But the risk of continuing endless war is greater. Xyrr'thal added, we have learned that cooperation is strength. We watch for signs of betrayal, and we deal with it. But our history shows that peace is possible. The chamber quieted again as the weight of these words sank in. Dylan stood, his voice carrying through the hall. This meeting is not just about a first contact. It is about a new future. If two Deathworld species can find peace, so can many others. The delegates exchanged looks. Some nodded slowly. Others remained doubtful. But no one could deny the power of the story they had heard. Xyrr'thal stood as well, regal and calm. We Larians no longer bow because of fear or dominance. We bow in respect and trust. Dylan stepped forward, offering a hand to Xyrr'thal. She placed her claw in his palm, a gesture that sealed the new bond. The chamber erupted in whispers and murmurs. Cameras recorded every moment. History was being made. Outside the hall, security teams relaxed slightly, but the tension remained. This was only the beginning of something larger and more uncertain. Captain Dylan Sebastian looked around one last time. The galaxy will watch us now. We must show them that cooperation is possible. Xyrr'thal's fierce eyes met his. And if anyone threatens that peace, they will find two Deathworld packs ready to fight as one. The council hall's lights shifted from harsh white to a softer glow, as if sensing a new hope. The news of the historic meeting between humans and Larians spread quickly across the Galactic Council and beyond. Hushed conversations filled corridors, and data streams buzzed with analysis and speculation. Many were amazed, others suspicious. Could two Deathworld species truly forge peace? Could this alliance last in a galaxy built on conflict? Captain Dylan Sebastian and pack leader Xyrr'thal found themselves at the center of this storm, their story told and retold in countless languages. But for them, the real challenge was just beginning. After the council meeting, the human and Laharian delegates were escorted to a private chamber to discuss what came next. The room was large but simple, designed for conversation, not ceremony. Outside, security was tight. The Council knew this alliance could shift power across star systems. Dylan looked around the room at Xyrr'thal, Ivy, and Nick. They shared a quiet understanding. Their story had broken barriers, but building peace would take more than words. Xyrr'thal's orange fur flickered softly as she spoke. The Council will expect proof. Not just stories, but real cooperation. We must show them how Deathworld species can live as allies. Dylan nodded. We need to create something stronger, a joint mission. Something that cannot be ignored or dismissed. Ivy, ever practical, suggested, we should focus on survival operations, disaster relief, resource sharing, training exchanges. Things that show our cooperation helps more than hurts. Nick smiled, and maybe I can help fix some ships along the way. They agreed to propose a joint expedition to a distant, dangerous planet known for its extreme conditions and valuable resources. If humans and Larians could survive and work together there, it would prove their alliance was real. But not everyone welcomed this new idea. In the shadows of the Galactic Council, whispers of dissent grew louder. Some feared the humans' unpredictable nature. Others worried about the Larians' power and pride. Old rivalries and grudges stirred beneath the surface. A group of delegates, led by a stern Xyrr'thal elder, began planning to challenge the alliance. They questioned if trust between Deathworld species was even possible or if it was a dangerous illusion. Despite the opposition, the Council formally approved the joint mission. The world watched as human and Laharian crews prepared for the expedition, their old mistrust slowly turning to cautious respect. Back on 130 Malawian Quachas, memories of survival fueled their determination. The lessons of shared hardship and trust became the foundation for a new chapter. The joint team trained together, combining human ingenuity with Laharian strength and hunting skills. They learned each other's languages, customs, and battle tactics. The differences that once divided them now became their greatest strengths. Captain Dylan and pack leader Xyrr'thal worked side by side, their bond deeper than ever. They had faced death together and had chosen life, not as enemies, but as allies. The day of departure arrived. Under the watchful eyes of the Galactic Council, the joint expedition launched from the station. Ships flew out into the dark, carrying hope and uncertainty. The destination was the planet Farthest, a savage death world with unpredictable weather, lethal predators, and hidden resources. It was a test unlike any before. As the ships entered Farthest's atmosphere, crews braced for the unknown. Ice storms raged, fierce beasts roamed, and the land itself seemed alive with danger. But the humans and Larians moved as one. Teams shared knowledge, equipment, and protection. When a sudden predator attack struck, Larian claws and human weapons combined to drive it off. When a frozen crevasse threatened to trap a patrol, teamwork saved lives. The joint mission showed the galaxy that cooperation was not weakness. It was survival. Meanwhile, back at the Council, the dissenters watched closely, waiting for signs of failure. But each report of success only deepened their worry. Captain Dylan sent regular messages filled with hope and determination. Pack leader Xyrr'thal's report spoke of growing trust and shared victories. Still, the threat of conflict lingered. Some factions planned to sabotage the mission, fearing what this new alliance could mean for power in the galaxy. But for now, on the harsh lands of Farthest, Deathworld predators stood together, proving that sometimes even the fiercest can learn to bow, not in submission, but in respect. The joint mission on Farthest had become more than a test, it was a turning point. The humans and Larians had proven that two Deathworld species could survive, thrive, and protect each other in a place designed to kill. But the galaxy was watching closely, and not all eyes were friendly. One cold, stormy morning on Farthest, the joint team faced a new danger. A hidden faction, fearing the growing alliance, had sabotaged vital equipment. The communication array went silent, and emergency alarms blared through the camp. Captain Dylan Sebastian was the first to react. Get teams to the repair bays. We can't lose contact, he ordered, voice calm but firm. His eyes met Xyrr'thal's, who was already organizing the pack leaders to guard their perimeter. Lieutenant Ivy checked the damage. The sabotage is clever, power lines severed, sensors destroyed. Whoever did this knows our systems well. Nick Vulov grinned grimly. They forgot one thing, human stubbornness. Despite the crisis, the team worked fast. Humans and Larians moved together, repairing lines, rerouting power, and securing the camp. Trust was their weapon now, stronger than claws or guns. As the storm raged outside, the camp held firm. The attackers, a shadowy group from within the Galactic Council, had underestimated the strength of this new pack. Meanwhile, Back on the council station, chaos erupted. The saboteurs were exposed, and their motives laid bare. The galaxy faced a choice: cling to old fears and divisions or embrace the new future this alliance promised. Captain Dylan and pack leader Xyrr'thal spoke before the council, their voices steady and strong. "We have faced death together on 130 Malawian Quachas and Viratis," Dylan said. "Our bond is proof that even the fiercest can find peace." Xyrr'thal's claws rested gently on the table. "We bow not out of fear, but respect. Our packs are stronger together." The council, moved by their courage and unity, voted to expand the alliance. Joint missions, shared resources, and open communication would become the new standard. Across the galaxy, species once divided by fear began to reconsider. The story of the humans and Larians inspired hope and changed minds. Captain Dylan looked to Xyrr'thal as the council chamber emptied. "This is just the start." She nodded, eyes fierce but warm. "When Deathworld species meet, one must bow, not in defeat, but in respect." And so, a new era began, where even the deadliest predators could choose friendship over fight, and the galaxy learned that survival sometimes means learning to trust.